You're watching Network Radio. Live from the Media Broadcasting Center.
All right, we are live from the Media Broadcasting Center. It's Tuesday night, so that brings us another edition of Canada the Nation. We already have Mark and multiple guests on the line with us. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
Hi there, Chance. I'm doing absolutely awesome. I'm really looking forward tonight. It's been a good, busy, hectic week again. And I see that you've got some just awesome things happening with the Media Center happening. And you're rocking right along as well, eh?
We're plenty busy here. Just a quick note to throw out a little promo of myself. Truth Talk will be returning this month with Fury. We have two absolutely huge guests lined up. I'm not gonna, name any names, but if anyone's watching the Crow House, you might have an idea of who's coming up, and we have a returning guest who's probably one of my favorite I've had coming back up. Mr. Peter Kling will be back with us. But enough of me. How's Canada the Nation? What do we got in store tonight? I see there's multiple Skypes open, and you have guests. So what are we doing tonight?
Well, tonight we're going to move forward with sharing some information from our special guests, Robin and Carol, who have been in battle in one of, I think, our biggest topics and our biggest hindrance globally, and certainly in this nation, with the Bank of Canada and mortgage frauds. This this is a subject that's very dear to me as well, personally, because I'm sitting back and I'm watching all of these people do numerous uh, different aspects on trying to discover remedy through all of this fraud and so forth. So I'm very honored to have Robin and Carol, that are people that are doers and are walking their talk and actually trying to do something. They're gracious enough to come on and not only share what's been going on with them, uh, but to be able to actually move forward with some questions. So don't forget our toll-free line, 1-866-806-6264. We'll get you in the queue and be able to answer some of your questions. And then, of course, the chat rooms are open as well. So without me babbling on much, I want to be able to get Carol and Robin on as much as possible. And I have a little backup beside me here with Sheila, that when I'm stumbling around, I get to get her to step in as well, but she'll be kind of overseeing me and giving me the slaps and kicks under the desk. So we do have her on board as well. So with that, hello, Carol. Robin, are you on there? And don't forget to unmute your mic.
Hi, Mark and Sheila. We're here.
Hi, Mark and Sheila. Glad to be on.
Hi, Robin and Carol. Glad you have you.
Perfect. I'm very honored to be able to get on with you, and thank you very much for taking the time, and not only for the work you're doing, but for uh, being able to share it with everybody else. And I know we've talked a little bit, and we've been in the different chat rooms and so forth. And I know, although it's very personal for you guys as well with the particular case, uh, you really are out there with the interest of the people of the nation and the people of the world, seeking remedy and putting a light on what's going on out there. So
Mm-hmm.
if you'd like, Carol and Robin, I'll kind of leave the platform open to you. If you want to give maybe a little bit of basic history background for the people that might not know, and just catch them up to speed a little bit with what's going on with you, and then actually get into what your actions are today.
Okay, well, I think, Mark, I'll go first, just so you can understand sort of where I was coming from in terms of where I'm at today. Like probably a couple years ago, I started seeing things on Facebook about the birth certificate and government corruption and the central banks and mortgage fraud. And I thought to myself, is this really real? And I just started doing my own research on the internet because I knew that regular television wasn't telling me the truth anymore. It was all, propaganda and scripted and everything. So I decided to go down, a couple of rabbit holes to figure out what was going on. And the great thing was my mortgage was coming up for renewal. So I thought, what a perfect time to ask the bank to show me the original wet ink signature document, show me the note. You see that all over the internet. So I decided to send HSBC Bank a letter back in July of last year. And within 1 week of me sending the letter asking just 4 simple questions, I got 5 different letters. They closed my business account, my Canadian and US accounts for my business, my mutual funds, my credit cards, and my personal accounts. And so that was the scare letters. And so I just automatically went, red flag, there's something wrong here. I've obviously figured something out that they don't want to talk to me anymore. Anyway, so one of the things was I wrote them back and said, well, why are you doing this, et cetera, et cetera. And they even wrote me back a letter to say that, like other private businesses, HSBC Bank Canada chooses the customers with whom it will establish and maintain banking relationships and is under no obligation to, nor will it disclose its criteria for this decision. So I'm thinking, okay, so you want me to contract with you, but you're not even going to like talk to me and you're just going to shut down all my accounts. So I don't know if I should just keep talking, Mark, or if you wanted to interrupt me or, and pardon me?
Sorry, Carol. Yeah, if you want to just take a breather every little bit, and then okay. I can maybe ask you a couple questions in between there, just so I don't have a whole list for you at the end.
Okay, so let me just finish off one more thing about this piece of asking the bank the questions. And one of the things too, Mark, we were like the perfect couple, making all our payments. We never missed a payment. We were the perfect clients. All we did was ask 4 simple questions and they shut us down. So I'll let you ask some questions then after that.
Perfect.
If you wanted.
Carol.
Okay.
Well, the one question that I did have out of just the opening there is, when they turned around and arbitrarily closed everything, your mutual funds and your business accounts and so forth, did they actually seize the assets as well, or did they just close them and you were still able to withdraw them?
Well, they gave, each one of the letters had like a certain date. So it said you have until, like each different letter, there was 5 of them, said you have until, so let's say it was, like they basically gave me like a couple of weeks to find another bank to do my business with, in other words, I think is what they were trying to do.
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So they didn't, it's not like you went into the bank and things are closed and you lost everything.
Yeah, sorry, I should have elaborated on that.
Yeah, okay, no, that just clarifies. That's great. And I just wanted to, before we carry on too, is as we go along with this, is to really kind of get through a key point here, is that everything that we are dealing with in this country, period, whether it's banks, the post office, the traffic center, everything that you turn around that we think is a service for us is nothing but a private business.
Yes.
They are no different than you having a business, and they have the right to say, you know what, this is private property. This doesn't get out. We choose who we do a customer. We choose who we want to deal with, and we charge what we want to. And I think that's a fundamental thing and a fundamental concept that people have to get through their head. It's not their government.
And can I interject? Sure. They all seem to be unilateral contracts as well, in that you can't submit your own terms or conditions, or you have no input. You have to either agree wholeheartedly or you're gone. Like they said to you, is find another bank, right? These are our rules or goodbye. There's no mutual exchange like you have in contract law to negotiate. Okay, well, I'm not really comfortable with this interest rate or this payment, so let's talk about this. Well, these are all strictly unilateral, and you have no input. Accept this or get out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So if you want to keep going, the floor is all yours.
Okay. So, well, I know we have lots of time, so Robin will be jumping in here soon too. So fast forward a little bit, and back and forth letters with the bank. Then they got the lawyers involved now, so they're going to take me to court, and so they tried to serve papers to us. And when I realized that who they were looking for is the all cap name in the birth certificate, the legal fiction, and I mean that's a whole show just to talk about that. Anyways, they showed up here, and I happened to be out of town, and my husband said, "Well, I'm not that person you're looking for isn't here." And so the process servicer threw the papers on the ground. My husband picked them up, put them in his car, like chased him down the driveway, basically, put him in his car, and he said, "These are not for me." The guy threw him on the ground and took off racing down the street, basically yelling swears at my husband, saying, "You've been served." Anyway, so I tried all kinds of remedies, which I didn't realize were the commercial remedies, which is kind of the man-made stuff. I asked for the judge and the lawyers notarized subscribed oaths. I asked for cuss-up numbers. My affidavit, by the time the court case happened, my affidavit was 176 pages thick. And that was all the correspondence in that 1 year. And I never went to court because the person that they wanted to appear in court is not me. I appeared in court in a big stack of paper. That was who they wanted to see, is how I took it. Because one of the things is I became friends with Sheila because I saw that her home was going through the same type of thing as me. So myself and her and Arthur Skyped many, many times, and she was there for me all the time to help me understand exactly what I was going through. And even though we did all these different remedies, none of it worked. And that's only because it wasn't the right remedy or the right relief, because it was all commercial, man-made, fictional stuff that they were never going to respond to me. So anyways, so fast forward again, this past couple months ago, Sheila shows up on my doorstep. Next thing you know, Robin's here. And I'm looking at him going, "I recognize you from somewhere. You look like somebody I know from like YouTube or something." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." And anyways, we start talking, and I happened to be in his Skype room in February. And as soon as he brought up the word Bible, I went, "Oh, I got to get out of here." Because that was my preconceived thought of, "Oh, geez, they're Bible pushers. I'm not going in here," right?
Yep.
And then he appears on my doorstep. You can't make this up. Like, he appeared here, told me about the Queen's oath. She swore to uphold the King James Bible, never to add to the laws or take away from the laws. Anything outside of the King James Bible is all the man-made stuff that we're stuck in right now. The piles and piles and piles of stuff and paper that we live through right now. So I'll stop at that point.
Okay, so that brings us right up, and I think I think most people are familiar with chasing into a number of different avenues, whether it's through Dean stuff or Robert stuff or the White Rabbits. There's been obviously dozens of people over the last 10 plus years now that the information has been getting out, and people have tried a number of different things and avenues. So I think a lot of people know what you are referring to. If they don't, it's very easy to do their due diligence and check those things out. I myself kept on following, and I have a mortgage to deal with, and I've been doing the same process, is waiting to see where the actual functioning is before just diving in. And I think that's important as well, that we really support each other, but people don't just get all emotional about it and throw themselves in harm's way before they're prepared to deal with it.
Well, the biggest thing, Mark, is they want to keep you scared.
Yep.
that you're not going to stand in truth. And that was the one thing where no matter what, even if I was scared, even if I cried myself to sleep because I was so upset about what was happening, I knew that I could not back down and I couldn't stop, because you cannot unknow the truth. So that's the biggest thing, is that you got to throw that fear away, because that's how they've controlled the whole world all this time. It's like, oh, you don't pay your taxes, you're going to go to jail. Oh, you don't do this, you're going to, like, they just constantly keep you scared.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. And how through this process were you with the home front, like the family and so forth? Or how was the effect of that? And do you have any kind of helpful hints or some advice for people listening on what may be the best way of handling that?
Well, I mean, it's been rough. It's like I feel like I haven't lived for the last year, that I've been stuck in front of a computer trying to find a relief from the fraud, because no matter what, I knew there was a fraud, and I wasn't going to stop, and I wasn't going to let them take my home. And yeah, it's lots of ups and downs. You know, I'd get like this beautiful letter already, and I'd send it off, and I'd send it with love and my intentions and all this great stuff. And, you know, Rod and I, my husband, we'd like sit around after the letter went, because we felt so good about, this is it, this is the one, this is the one. And then we'd sit there, and then nothing would happen. And then the stress of like, okay, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? So it's like, it wasn't like rosy. The last year's been a rough year. Like, in terms of, I mean, we're still together. We made it through all this. And if I didn't have the help of like Sheila and now Robin and just all the different people that are doing the same stuff, and just that whole support group, I mean, I've lost friends. You know, my neighbors don't even want to talk to me because they think I'm nuts, you know, and it's just, it's not a simple road to stand in truth.
No, absolutely, and you know, we have to admire everybody that does take this path, and I think it is very important to share it and actually support each other as well.
Yeah.
And that is whether, you know, it's simply an ear to listen to and help share the information and so forth. Like you say, this isn't a matter of people that just want something for nothing and are in bad times and then want to turn on things. This is a matter of the truth.
Yeah.
And to me as well, this is a matter of we're funding the corruption and we're funding everything else that goes on. And
Yeah.
we have to make a stand somewhere. And to me, the two main functioning things of this, which we are really trying to more focus on with CTN, is to stop paying taxes and to handle the banks. If we
Yeah.
can cut off the supply of funding and circumvent that fear level, I think this is an automatic thing that both people can get around as well. So we'll let you continue on what you're now doing on this step with Robin, and maybe you can explain that process and this kind of avenue of remedy.
Okay. Well, when Sheila and Robin were here, Robin had sort of a template because Robin's also helped lots of other people. So he already had sort of I guess, I don't know, I'm going to call it a template to start with, in terms of getting agreements with these private men and women. That's the other thing, is that I'm dealing with the private men and women that are trying to harm me now. I'm not dealing with Mr. So-and-so of the bank and the titles of these different players that have been part of this whole, like, scenario. So now, after I understood what Robin said to me, and kind of the light bulb went off, and I thought, wow, this is actually pretty simple compared to the stuff that I've been doing. And he gave me the template. It started out as 4 pages, went to 23 pages, and then with Sheila's beautiful, wonderful
editing.
Pardon me?
Editing.
Entity?
Editing.
What's that mean?
To edit.
Oh, the editing. Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys. With Sheila's wonderful editing ability, she got the document down to basically 4.5 pages with 1.5 pages of pictures of the people. Like, and Mark, if you want me to, I can share the 2 videos that Robin did for myself, as well as the agreement that's now on his blog. And what I did is I basically did a notice to admit to the private men and women, and Robin actually wrote it. Well, he was the guy that signed it because my husband and I gave him kind of the power to speak for us because we're newly born into this, and so we don't necessarily know everything to say. So,
Just for the listeners,
Okay.
a notice to admit is civil rules in courts all the way around the Commonwealth have a process where they are given 2 weeks to dispute your points of truth. If they don't dispute the points of truth within those 2 weeks, the court deems those points as true.
So that's where I'm at. I now have a confirmed agreement with 3 witnesses, which is part of Matthew 18:15-20, which
That's
I don't
that's
need to
the
read
origin.
it, but yeah, that's
the
origin.
origin
It's
of
just
the notice to admit principle.
yeah. So that's where I'm at. I have an order nisi from the court, and that date is coming up August 12th, where they're saying that I have to redeem my mortgage and pay all this money, et cetera, et cetera. However, if they come after me or do anything else, I now have this confirmed agreement, and I will take them all to court and sue them, and their bond will be gone.
I'll try and explain a little
Okay,
bit
Robin
here.
can explain this piece.
So people understand from the get-go what's going on. Most people know that we have a British monarchy with a queen that swore to defend the laws of God with all of her power in 1953. A lot of people don't know that last part, that she actually did go through quite a ceremony to swear to defend the laws of God with all of her power. And most people don't know that there's a section 176 of the Criminal Code that's very important because it defends men or women that are ministers, lowercase m on that word minister, or men and women that are gathered together for a moral, social, or benevolent purpose. They cannot be obstructed on the pretense of executing any civil code violation. Now, any particular order from a civil master with regards to property for a bank is always a civil order. It's civil law. There's nothing criminal about it. So when they normally come to a house, they're expecting that house to be part of a commercial registration. They've usually got liens on it. But if they come to the house and they've been pre-noticed that that's no longer a house, but it's a place of worship, it's a sanctuary, they have a bit of a difficult time obstructing the people that are within that sanctuary or even on the property of the sanctuary, because right away their action, their desire, turns criminal once they decide to press, because they're only there with some civil orders, but the civil orders don't have any authority to obstruct your ministry, especially when you're acting upon the premise that there was a fraud that took place, and you can't be compelled to violate your faith and participate in a fraud. In Canada in 2004, it was a very, very interesting case that took place in the Supreme Court of Canada. A Jewish couple had signed a contract not to make anything on their balconies at all, no erect any structures at all. And Sukkah came along, which is the time they remember going through the desert for 40 years, and they make these tents and they go inside of them, and they don't eat or drink for 4 days. And so they put up their Sukkah tent, and the company that owned that particular condo association took them to court. North Crest Syndicate was their name. And they went to, and they got an injunction to have the tent removed. And they did. And the Jewish couple went and joined with a bunch of other groups. One was, I think, the United Church, along with the United Sikh Association. And they took it to the Supreme Court of Canada. The Supreme Court of Canada said, if a contract offends your ability to practice your faith and beliefs, the contract is null and void to the extent that it offends your faith and beliefs. So Revenue Canada believes that it has a contract with you when you sign up and get a social insurance number, either as a boy or an adult. You become a constitutor, one who promises to pay the debt of another once you sign up that social insurance card request. And they got a set of rules for constitutors. It's called a constitution. Now, if at any time that after you've entered into that contract to be a constitutor and pay taxes, you decide to take up your faith in the same book that the Queen said she was sworn to defend, well, once you let them know that you want to practice that book, and that book says you can't bow to false gods, and the false gods are the ones that add to God's law, well, you can tell them I can't find the Income Tax Act in the book, and I'm going to join this church unless you got the authority to intimidate me after I join the church to break God's law that the Queen swore to defend. So if you've got some authority to do that, let me know in a couple of weeks before I join this church. Otherwise, I'm going to join the church, and I won't be able to pay you taxes anymore. Well, that's kind of funny in one way, but it's very factual, actual, smack you in your face, irrefutably true in another. Because if you don't exercise your faith to the tax man, he assumes you haven't got any. Now, with regards to a bank, it's the same thing. You signed a contract. Now, if at some later time, let's just take interest for an easy one. At some time after you've signed this contract where you're paying interest on a loan, usury, you read your book again, the Bible, or somebody tells you it should be important in your life, and you see in there multiple times it says you shouldn't be involved in usury. And you go to your bank and say, listen, I can't commit to pay this usury anymore. This contract violates my faith. I want to stop doing this, and everything that I paid into this usurious contract, I want you to give it back and put it to the principal. Now, what I've just said isn't a theory, because we already did this in Alberta. A woman had a problem with the Treasury Board, and they had stickers all over her property. They were going to auction off farm machinery and everything to get their money back. We went into the Treasury branch, and I told them the story. She's willing to pay you the principal, take all the interest and apply it to the principal, and she'll continue making the payments until the debt is paid. She can't be committed to pay the interest. It violates her faith. Well, when you got 10 million Islamics that usury is the main violation of their faith, you can't tell the Christians, it's in the same Bible, you can't tell the Christians that they can't escape their contract because if they claim usury. It's a simple shoe-in. Once you mention it, you're no longer required to pay it. So this is one way of putting the bank in a position where not only are they recognizing your faith and put in the impossible position of either accepting your offer or committing religious discrimination and intimidation, but at the same time, because they've accepted your offer, and they pretty much have to, that later on you can come along and say, well, I'm real glad you did that, but now I have to ask where the origin of the funds came from. I want to know who funded that loan. And I want to know if it was done straight up and it was fair and you guys had the coin in your hand when I came along. But if you needed my note as funds to make this happen, well, it sounds to me like an exchange took place. And if that's true, well, then I think we got to talk about fraud, because you guys told me it was going to be a loan. A loan and an exchange are not the same. That's false advertising, boys. Let's talk about this.
And it all makes perfect sense as well. And we're just at the first half hour. I actually got the video that you mentioned, Carol.
There's two of them actually, but yeah, the second one's good.
Yeah, I got the one up to Chance because I did have it from what you shared with me.
Okay.
So we'll just bring Chance on there a moment, and I think he's going to have it queued up for us. We're going to give that a play, and
Oh, okay.
we just have to both mute our mics so that we don't over sound the video when it's playing.
Okay, should I mute right now?
Yeah, we'll just let Chance get on for a second
here.
and let us know that he's all ready so we don't have some dead air there.
I'm
You
always
there,
here.
Chance? That's my man. He's a godsend, I'll tell you. So we'll both mute out, and you take it over for us, and just let us know when you want us to unmute.
Okay, I got it pretty much ready to go. So we'll all hit mute, even myself. And as soon as we're done, I'll come back up and let us all know.
Hello, this is Minister Edward J. Robin of the Church of Ecumenical Redemption International, speaking today on behalf of the Church and its ministers with specific regard to Brian Gibbons and Kimberly Larson of the law firm Lawson and Lundell regarding dealings with HSBC and ministers of our church. I wanted to come to an agreement with you so all are in fairness showing their cards on the table and there is no deception taking place that would harm any man or woman's ability to practice their faith and beliefs in the King James Bible. Now, the reason I'm making you this video is there are many assumptions in the financial world that lawyers have precedent over men and women, that contracts with corporations which are dead in law have precedent over men and women. Now, this has been taking place for a long time between the banks, the courts, and the lawyers that represent the banks, and of course those men and women that fall into the financial nightmare of usury and mortgages. Now, in my travels, I've been exposing people to the message Christ delivered to them in the King James Bible, that they are to walk away from the system of usury, commerce, and Mammon's law that has been instituted out of greed and treating men and women as if they were slaves. In today's world, this is just not acceptable. You men and women acting as lawyers for the bank know certainly well that the men and women that are on the other side of the fence living in the houses that you foreclose upon are no different, no less, no better than you. They have the same family values. They go to the same schools. They go to the same churches. They have the same beliefs. Some of them don't believe in God at all, but they are no different, no better, no less than you or I. The point that I'm trying to make is if you refer to your law, 176 of your criminal code, you can clearly see that you're not allowed, under civil authority, to intimidate any man or woman, to violate their faith, obstruct their ability to practice their faith, whether it be in the going to or the returning from the performance of any of those functions of their faith mentioned in the King James Bible. The first and primary function in this particular circumstance is to escape the role that usury is inflicted upon men and women wishing to exercise their faith, be it newfound or not, in the annals and rolls and rules of the King James Bible. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II has been set up as a Christian monarch to defend the laws of God with all of her power. That same Christian monarch is what the Law Society operates under and the bar. The Inns of the Court in England are well established and they are ruled under the laws of the Bible. No Inns of the Court officer can exceed the laws of the King James Bible nor intimidate any man and woman to violate their faith in that book. Carol Mary Helen and Roderick Anthony of the Volk family are being intimidated by your process, by your commercial assumptions, by your dead, godless greed imposed upon them in abstinence of your moral standard to consider that they can't participate in this any longer. Your own Supreme Court of Canada, your commercial god, said in 2004 that a contract, if it interferes with your ability to practice your faith and belief, to the extent of the nature of that extent, is null and void. That means that you can't push a man or woman to violate their faith and belief and continue to correspond to a usurious contract formed in fraud. You cannot. If you continue to do so in awareness that they are trying to exercise their faith, newfound or not, you're doing so with a willful malice and continuance of efforts to extract something that never existed from them, that interest, that usury. They have made an offer to you to live within their faith, to offer all of those payments that were made over the years that they had a business relationship with the banks in this particular house listed as a surety for this loan. They're making an offer that you accept all those payments in application to the principal of what was associated with a loan, something that was actually an exchange. That's another issue. At this point, the issue is, are you going to accept their offer and show good faith towards a couple who are trying to exercise their faith the best that they know how without being intimidated into a corner by the annals of darkness that have no concern or moral standard for the men and women that they impose that moral standard or moralist standard upon? This puts you into a breach of duty of care as the directors of your various organizations and LLPs. That breach represents a tort application against you that's indefeasible in a court that anybody decides to take you to in your private capacity. Now, I'm not mentioning these things as a threat to you. I'm merely bringing these into your awareness as my duty as the watchman. Ezekiel 33, verses 1 through 10 can advise you as to the role of every man and woman that has their faith in following the rules of the Bible, that you have a duty to be the watchman. That's my position here today to you, is to let you know that these men and women are exercising their faith, and they're sincere, and you do not get to trot upon it without opening yourself up to private liability, and your bond is gone. If you don't know what your bond is, speak to your law society and ask them how much you pay each month for insurance. You must have a public liability bond in order to operate dealing with the public, because if any of your actions bring harm to the public's ability to do what's common to all of Her Majesty's subjects, you act as a general nuisance. If you obstruct of any of Her Majesty's subjects from their ability to practice their faith and beliefs, you're guilty of obstruction. If you intimidate any of these men and women to violate their solidly found and majestically defended faith and beliefs, you violate 423 of the Criminal Code and you're intimidating them. Now, if you have a rational explanation as to why you're doing this, I'm more than open to hear and listen to your side of the story. But as far as the continuance of the rape and pillage of this man and woman in their faith, in their sanctuary, their temple declared as a church, I advise you to give a second look at what you're doing and a closer to the heart examination of your process. What they've offered you is fair and equitable. Nobody loses anything. The books are balanced. Please consider it and take your time. I thank you so much for putting this to your heart rather than to the pocketbook, and may God bless. Have yourself a great day. Bye for now.
All right, perfect. That seemed to have played across just nicely, and as soon as Mark unmutes his microphone, we'll be able to...
I'm
All
back.
right, perfect.
Thank you. That looked absolutely awesome. I got it open in the other window. It's you're doing a great job on the graphics. I really that video really resonated with me when I first saw it, because it was such a precise understanding, and for me too, I really resonated with the intent behind the video. I think it's important that people understand this is not a matter of simply trying to duck out of a mortgage and get something for free and so forth. I think it kind of explains it really well. So I really think that's a powerful message. I think it was important to show that video through the show so that people have a direct reference to go back and see it again as many times as we want. Plus, it'll be archived up on the shows, so anybody's going to be able to share this archive around, and they'll have access to the video and so forth. So we'll just get Carol back on here as well.
I'm back.
Great, Carol. So thank you again, Robin, for doing that. I think it was an absolutely great form of communication, and I think it was really important for people not only to hear things and read them, but to actually be able to connect through this medium that's available to us.
Yes, Skype is underutilized as far as its capacity to have an effect, and I thank you so much for recognizing the intent and the heart behind what I was saying, because I was trying to make it as serious and yet as friendly as possible at the same time. But I do agree with you that Skype, or not Skype, but I mean YouTube, even Skype as well, it seems to me we're just advancing to the point where we're starting to understand what kind of power can be utilized by using these instruments.
Absolutely, and I mean this is also even our format here with doing the alternative medias and the media center. I mean this is why we've made this platform overall, and Media Broadcast Center and CTN and so forth to share this information to people and to importantly give people a platform like yourselves to be able to utilize everything else. And we've got to start to really come together and use them in order to get this out.
I think one of the problems is when people feel they're very much alone and that they're the only ones going through this. And to get this out in the open for them to understand that everybody is going through this. These are fraudulent contracts, and that they aren't alone. There is corruption, there is confusion going on, to reach out and to make this publicly known. And I like the way that you have tried every avenue, Carol, right from the get-go. I've been so proud of you. You've been very honorable, totally transparent, and you have approached them every step of the way, simply asking them to show you what you were entitled to see, and to the point where nobody was hearing you. And you do have to eventually talk to the private men and women that are ultimately making these decisions corporately, but they are men and women that are hurting you and hurting people with these decisions, following these corporate banking charters without sitting down and realizing what is happening here. Why are these homes, why are these foreclosures, why are these tribunals going through the way they are? And they're not legitimate court procedures. You didn't go to any of the court hearings because they weren't really for you.
No. And I just, when we just finished the video and Mark came on and quickly said something about, I'm not doing this to get out of a mortgage, which is probably what most people are going to think. They're going to think, oh, she just wants to get out of her mortgage. I've been paying for my mortgage for 21 years. If you look at the compounded interest and what I've paid and the whole point of the usury that I don't want to be part of, my house has been paid for many times already. Like, if you look at the principal that I've borrowed and all the money that I've paid for 21 years, I've already paid for this house. And that's what the other thing that Robin was trying to say.
Not only that, but when you understand the securitization and the selling and the insuring of mortgage papers and the number of times that the bank has actually received payment for that property and monetized, then you kind of understand that, whoa, what's really going on here?
Yeah.
Fraud.
Just like that time that Robin explained it, if you walked into a theater and yelled fire, what would happen? Well, we're walking into the banks now and saying fraud.
Exactly. And so what do you feel the steps here are, Robin?
Well, the steps are following the biblical advice of Christ, he said, get in an agreement with them privately. He says that in Matthew 5:25. So we took that quite literally in Matthew 18:15 through 20. He tells people, go to them privately between just you and him alone, or whoever it is you need to get this agreement with, and get all the facts down and see if you can affect the agreement where he says, yeah, I agree with you. And if he doesn't, and then it says to bring along 2 or more witnesses, so the mouths of 2 or more witnesses, every word that you're trying to establish may be established as you doing the good thing, trying to get this agreement. If he won't listen, then it says, tell it unto the church, and that would be the whole ecclesia, everybody that's in the believing state, those who believe in Christ. So you would put a notice in the newspaper, and we have done this. And if they don't respond to dispute, you send a clipping of that newspaper notice back to them and thank them very much for being in honor, and that they did respect the advice of Christ and they did not dispute the points. Therefore, they have agreed to the points. And you send them along a copy of the notice to admit rules in their civil court applications, so they don't so they can't say, oh, this is one of these harebrained unilateral contracts, and we don't accept it, because it's right there in their notice to admit rules. In British Columbia, it's 14 days. In Alberta, it's 20 days. In Australia, I think it's 14 days. So it varies from place to place. But when you go look up in the quotation marks, notice to admit, and then you read Matthew 18:15 through 20, you'll see where the notice to admit principle originated from. It's an honorable method of giving both parties the opportunity to agree upon things before they step into the theater of argument. The court makes its money off of argument, and they don't want to waste any of their precious, valuable time talking about what you agree upon. So they give you the opportunity to get what you agree upon out of the way, so they can get down to the dirty business of making money off of you arguing and being in dishonor. If you're in agreement, you're in total honor. So following what Christ did and telling them that that's what you're doing, why you're doing it, puts you in a very highlighted position, and anything that they would do to resist it makes them look awful dark.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess with a lot of people getting their heads around this as well, I think one of the things with this whole fear and intimidation tactic that's worked for them for the last 200 years, let's face it, they're not listening to anything, and they themselves are so separated that while you're going through this process, you also have the side departments going on where they're actually serving the foreclosures and knocking on the door, asking you to vacate as well. And I think that's something that people have the questioning about, and what is the remedy within inside of that?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, Rod and Carol both were informed about the potentials. Christ himself said, if you would stand with him and stand for his name, you're going to be persecuted. And I said, well, that's a for sure. But if you're smart, he said, get an agreement with him, as I'd already just gone over. So what I've told them to do is, in part, to gain the agreement with him, is to put a notice on the property. They've got one on the side door and one on the front door. And there's going to be a notice in the newspaper to the effect that this house is now a church. It's one of the houses of the Church of Ecumenical Redemption International, and it's a sanctuary for those men and women that wish to engage in non-secular worship. They don't want to be engaged in any one of these registered secular churches that are all part of the tax-paying mammon school. In other words, they're all part of the false god regimen, every single church that's registered North America worldwide. Once the people begin to realize that the registries are owned by the creditor, if Canada is in a debtor position, which it is and has been since 1933, the corporation that is, then if the creditor has assets, if the debtor has assets Well, the assets are listed in the registries, and the creditor now owns all of the assets that are in the registries. People have submitted the value of their assets into the registries and given full title to the owner of the registries. In this case would be the debtor, which handed it over to the creditor soon as the 1933 bankruptcy receivership took place. And it's been running ever since. Now, the average man or woman doesn't understand that. They don't understand what's looming in the future with the bail-in. When the banks fail, the U.S. currency fails, all the money that people have in their bank accounts will become the property of the banks, and then we'll take it as if it was theirs. And the people screaming and yelling about where their money is will have nobody to turn to but their crooked politicians.
And that's going to be a real eye opener for everybody. And what really I like about tying these really two factors in about tax in the banks is that it does tax in that everybody needs to know, follow the money. The good old adage, follow the money. It's the mammon that is the whole energy of their system.
Yes.
So if they don't understand the basic principle of you don't own anything, the corporation and the whole hierarchy of the mammon owns absolutely everything. And that should help kind of eliminate some of the fear here.
The biblical advice is get out of her, my people. Babylon the Great is fallen. Now, that particular scripture has been misinterpreted, even taken at face value for a city that died back in 550 AD. Babylon, it fell. But Christ was not referring to a city. What he was referring to was the great law of Babylon, and it's called the Babylonian Talmud. Those people are men and women, your listeners out there, that have taken the time to research what the Talmud is. It is sort of like the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. Anybody can see and know the Torah. It's in all Bibles. The Talmud is the oral law of the Judaic or history going back 4,000 years to Babylon. It was created out of the Code of Hammurabi. And when they came out of Babylon, some of the rabbis liked that law so much, they brought it with them, and they started adding to it and making sort of like a Jewish common law. And that is called the Talmud. Anybody that wishes to apprise themselves of it, I advise them strongly to go to come-and-here.com. That's comeandhere.com with hyphens in the middle of the words. That is put up by Joyce Ballantyne, and it is probably the most effective, selective, unedited view on the Talmud worldwide, and you can get a complete understanding of why the United States Congress is in bed with these people and has made legislation according to the needs of the people that run the Talmud. I think it's important for every man and woman to understand the basis of how it is intertwined with our laws, with our money system, with even the education system and our media system. If you don't, well, then you get subject to the media telling you that you can't see anything anti-Semitic because then you're, some kind of a hate mongerer. One of the main things that just brought to my attention here that I try and tell people as an eye-opener along their trip into the rabbit hole, so to speak, as Carol brought up, is to study the word person with the purpose of studying that word person to focus that you cannot be one. That a person simply was the root word for a mask worn by a player on a stage. So if you could somehow imagine how you could call yourself a mask, I might entertain listening to you, but most people can't do that. I've never met anybody that can, so none of us are persons. The whole of the law throughout the United Kingdom, every single code and regulation is relative to a person, not a man. And in Canada, a person is defined as Her Majesty or an organization in Section 2 of the Criminal Code, where it says everyone, person, and owner. And the reason I'm going into such great detail about this one little word, it is that little word and the balance of knowing what it means that will lead you either to the freedom of what Christ offered or to the enslavement of what they've intended for everybody else. So when you look up the scriptures containing that word, and I'm only going to give you a few of them that are pertinent, Deuteronomy 1:17 says God's no respecter of persons. Now there's about 7 others that say exactly the same, so I'm not going to repeat them. Somebody can type in person, scriptures into their Google search engine, and they'll find numerous ones in the King James Bible, because all the other Bibles have removed the word person for good reason. The world didn't want, the people that put that word in there in the first place found out it wasn't such a good word to use, and so they've removed it from all the other Bibles. You'll only find it in the King James Bible and I believe the Geneva Bible. But the idea, what I wanted to get across to the listeners, is that Deuteronomy 1:17, Deuteronomy 10:17 says God's no respecter of persons. So we got that sound, and there's many others that say the same. And now I'm going to jump ahead to James 2:9. James is in the New Testament after the Gospels. James 2:9 says, if you should show respect to persons, you commit sin, and you shall be convinced of the law as a transgressor. Now, it was on the basis of those scriptures that I got 7 judges disqualified from the bench in Alberta, because they wanted me to answer up to a person's name, this all capital thing. And I told them that I couldn't, that they were intimidating me, and they did intimidate me and put me in jail because I wouldn't submit to them. So then I complained, and I was very fortunate because I had 5 witnesses that were in the room with all those 7 judges over the 2 years that they did this. And we complained to the head judge in Alberta. I thought it was Gail Dickery at the time. It turned out it was Terry Matchett. And Terry Matchett disqualified all 7 of those judges, so they can never ever sit again in my case. One of the incredible points is that Terry Matchett ended up on the bench because in 2005 I met him privately, without even knowing he was a lawyer, out in a farmhouse in southern Alberta. And for 4 hours, he got the full enchilada of everything that I knew, because he said he was a lawyer, and I had no idea he was going to be a judge at that time, and neither did he. So here we have from 2005 up to 2012, all of a sudden he's sitting on the bench, he gets the complaint with 5 witnesses, and bang, something takes place that's never happened in the whole history of the British Commonwealth. 7 judges got disqualified for intimidating a man to violate his faith and belief in the King James Bible. Now, first out of the bag, that's just a bunch of words, and maybe not a lot of imagination going along with those words. But the more one thinks about those words in a Christian monarchy, in a system where the Queen swore to defend the laws of God with all of her power, well, then the ramifications of what just took place might get a little bit deeper into the soul, and you can realize the power there and why I now am red flagged on the Canadian Police Information Center, which is called CPIC. And you're stopped, and a policeman wants to know your name, etc., and he's going to run you to check out who you are. He puts you into the machine. That's called CPIC. When it comes back on me, it says, do not apprehend, do not detain. That's because I represent a threat to their system. If I go back into their system, risk management's going to have to pay out, because I've already established who they are. They're frauds and imposters. They're false gods. And I've already established I can't be compelled to come and bow before them. I've sent them my lawful excuse for failure to appear. So I basically stepped out of the system. So what I'm trying to do now is help people like Carolyn Rod and many, many others out there that are in need of extracting themselves from the fraud of usury and the financial, blackout that we have out there. People are having a hard time living, and they go into debt, and then they don't realize that there is a way out, and the Bible offers it.
It's amazing as I've been going along this journey over the last 2 years. And I think I've been a little fortunate that I've been patient, and we work very hard, and we're much the same as the average people out there, and Carol and everybody else. We don't want anything given to us, but we want to be dealt honorably. And to make these bridges between how corrupt this system is and still be able to survive and so forth. I think these type of examples are going to go such a long way, along with building the bridges like community shop and the nurse programs and that give people the chance to have employment and the entrepreneurship, and going back to the simple is the real hidden remedy of things, is going back to the way we were meant to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's go on the reverse side, Carol.
Just hang on, Mark. I wanted to add one more thing that Robin didn't say.
Yep.
In all the courthouses in Alberta now, there are no Bibles. They've been removed out of the courthouses in all of the Alberta courthouses.
Since I wrote a letter to the Queen in 2000, in 2001, the head judge in Alberta removed all the King James Bibles from all the courthouses, because I proved to the Queen that they were running a fraud, and they had her Bible heading up the fraud. And I was right. And so
Isn't
they
that
pulled.
amazing?
Yeah. I wanted to add that because I thought that was pretty neat.
Well, I mean, I think that's very important. I mean, that's one message that should really get out very clear, because again, that shows that your court is not government. It's a private business for profit, and it gets to do whatever it wants to do.
And it's trying to, I look at it as they're trying to hide the truth. They're trying to take the Bible out of everywhere now.
Yep.
So
well, it's one of their, it's the only remedy that there really is.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have at least that pushback on the other side, there'll be so few that, well, basically they'll just have a straight out and out martial law, even though they do actually technically have it now. And then you're really in for a battle.
Speaking of a martial law, Mark, they do have an Operation Silent Defender. And the reason I know about that and that it is real is in the Canadian Style, the Translation Bureau of Canada makes this document called the Canadian Style. And in that document, it talks about the only usage for an all capital letter name. And it says it's for a special classified operations, and it gives the sample Operation Silent Defender. So that's just a sample in a book, right? Well, in about 2004 or 5, I'm sitting in the living room of a guy near Quesnel, BC, off in the mountains, and he's got a retired military commander visiting him, a guy that's got a level 6 classified type of security thing. And I'm talking away, and I'm telling Don and him some of the stuff I've discovered. And then I brought up Operation Silent Defender. Well, this guy jumped off that chair like somebody lit a fire under it, and right away, and he goes, "Who the hell are you?" He looked at me like with the dirtiest evil eye, and right away he turned to Don. He says, "Don, who the hell is this guy, and what's he doing in your living room?" And he was real serious, like he scared me. I thought, whoa, what the heck? Thought he was going to pull a gun or something. But anyways, he got really mad. And so I'm saying, what's the problem here? What's the problem? He says, "You're either a spy or an agent, a cross agent. What the hell? How do you know about Silent Defender?" And I went, whoa, just a minute. So I reached in my briefcase, and he bristled right away. And Don goes, "Hey, it's okay." I forget the guy's name. Don told him to quiet down a second. Anyways, I pull out the Canadian Style, and I turn it to the section about militarization in all capital letters. And I show it to him. There it is right there. And he picks it up, and he looks at it, Don. He goes, "Holy mackerel, Don, this is a seriously classified operation. Why it's in this book, I have no idea." Listen, he apologized to me, but he says, "That's a really heavy-duty operation. Wow." Like, he was blown away. So that thing actually exists. And now it occurred to me, since that's the only section in Canadian law, according to that document, that they're allowed to capitalize names, then the whole bankruptcy since 1933 had to go along with the 1931 Statute of Westminster. Here's part of the puzzle. If you've never read the Statute of Westminster, it's the one for the king. He's got the banksters from the 1929 stock market crash knocking on his door saying, hey, all your countries are bankrupt. My, those are nice jewels you got over there. And the king goes, oh, no, you don't. He runs over, does up the Statute of Westminster, cuts himself loose from making any laws for the rest of the Commonwealth countries ever again. But guess what he leaves behind? He leaves behind his royal style and title. Guess what Operation Silent Defender is?
His royal style and title.
In all capitalization, they've seized up as ownership the whole corporate venue.
Wow.
That's why it's in all capital letters. That's why we got the all capital letters on our names. Everything is under Operation Silent Defender.
Huh.
That's why he got so freaked out. That's a pretty big operation.
Wow, what a rabbit hole. And here I thought I knew something. Isn't it? Every day is just amazing, isn't it? And I think we got to also one thing I want to share with the listeners too, because I'm in the same spot, and I think to a certain degree we all are. Whether it's somebody like Robin, who obviously has spent years and just a dedication to this, or Gordon Maxwell, or the other dozens and dozens of people out there that once you start going down this rabbit hole, you realize have been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years. This system has been operating in what I've always kind of classified as a 2,000-year-old war against man and against the creator. And we don't have, I believe, the onus to understand 2,000 years of history and this amazing resources and infrastructure and the most brilliant brains in the world putting this system together. You're never going to overcome that by trying to understand it. You don't understand evil, you simply reject it.
That's it. I studied the UCC process for quite a few years through a fellow named Gord Schiller. Started off with Eldon Warman. And after a while, I went to Gord. I guess I'd been at it for about 2 years. And I said, Gord, you've taught me pretty good that this whole process is a fraud, right? And he went, yeah, all those man regulations are a fraud. And I said, all of them, even the UCC. And he said, yeah. And so we were a bunch of people at a Boston Pizza, all the best students say. So I turned to Gord and I said, Gord, sounds to me like you're saying we can cure a fraud with a fraud. But Gord, how can you get virginity out of bed and down with a prostitute?
Absolutely.
Everybody burst out laughing but him. He got angry.
Well, sure, you bursted his financial bubble because that was one of the things I went down was Gordon Hall and a few of the other ones that were doing this mastery in commerce. And I mean, I saw it within maybe a week of starting to do some of the seminars, and I had the feeling right from the third one, and I'm going, but wait a minute, you're stepping into their court saying you want to discharge this and playing the line. Well, aren't you just playing the fraud to get your benefit?
That's right.
So you're really supporting the system.
Wait, what most people are unaware of is that every commercial code, regulation, council policy, all of it's internationally copyrighted, owned property. It's owned. Most of it's in Brussels. So that property goes under the doctrine of use. And if you make use of somebody's property and you gain a benefit from it, the adage in law, he who gains the benefit must also pay the price. In the case of man-made law, the price is jurisdiction. Such in the case, I'll give you an example of the simple word appearance. Most people think that that's what they see in the mirror every morning, but in legal jargon, it means the formal process by which one submits themselves to the jurisdiction of the court. Now, most people wouldn't have a problem with that unless they understood the court was a false god that have added to God's law and defied God by doing so. In a Christian monarchy, everybody's got the advantage of doing that because 180 of their criminal code says that if they make you feel uncomfortable by trying to prevent you from doing what's common to all of Her Majesty's subjects, such as worship of God in the Bible, well, that's a nuisance and they become criminal. That's just to make you feel uncomfortable. 176 of their criminal code says that if they obstruct you for any reason whatsoever on the pretense of executing civil code violation, they can go to jail for 2 years. They're criminal. 423 of their criminal code says that if they intimidate you, trying to make you to stop doing something you have a right to do, or trying to make you do something you have a right not to do, well, again, they're going to jail for quite a while. The criminal code in Canada, as it's written, does not apply to men and women. It only applies to persons. And that, again, is through the description that I mentioned earlier in Section 2 and Section 35 of the Canada Interpretation Act. Most people don't have the time to read laws. A lot of them seem kind of boring and they don't understand legalese. So I took the time for people to cut to the chase and say, well, if I could explain it in one word, how the law don't apply to them, it sure beats taking a 6-month course. And so when you read the Section 35 of the Canada Interpretation Act, and it says a person includes a corporation. Well, the next thing you got to do is figure out, well, what's that word include mean? And well, it's quite simply only that which comes after it. And then you want to say, well, what's a corporation? Well, it's something that doesn't have a heart, no blood, no veins, no life.
Corpse.
Yeah, it can't be you. And if you went back to Section 2 of the Criminal Code, it defined it as Her Majesty or an organization. Well, since you don't have a crown and you can't be more than one unless you got MPD, split personality, neither one of those descriptions fit you. Now, the kicker is if you happen to believe in that Bible, and I'm not banging anybody on the head with it, but if you close it, you open it up and you see there in Deuteronomy 1:17, Deuteronomy 10:17, it says God's no respecter of persons. And it says in 2 Samuel 14:14, God's no respecter of persons. And it says Matthew 22:16, God's no respecter of persons. It says Acts 10:34, and Peter said to the other apostles, I think God's no respecter of persons. In Romans 2:11, it says it again, God's no respecter of persons. So they're sure hammering that down our throat there in those scriptures, but James 2:9, as I've already said, just for repetition's sake, if you should show respect to persons, you commit sin and shall be convinced of the law as a transgressor. So once you understand that, most men and women, if they read that, they can properly ask the question, that means that if I'm not a person, then none of these laws of the Queen apply to me, right? And I go, that's right. And they can't intimidate me to be a person because then they're guilty of 423 of the Criminal Code. Is that right? And I go, that's right. So the question is then most people should have, if it's that simple, why haven't people been doing it? And that's pretty simple to explain. Our world is so complex and noisy, and our egos are so full of brilliance and things that we can do, that when somebody comes along and exposes things to us that we've been a fool all these years, submitting ourselves to a fraud, our minds feel real foolish, and a lot of our minds will totally reject in cognitive dissonance everything we've just heard.
I think that's pretty much bang on, and I would like to add my kind of personal experience there as well. As I started going through this and my awakening, I actually come from a background of the staunch religious upbringing, the kind of the knocking on the door of the Roman Catholic, and then that wasn't good enough, so you had to go to Anglican, and then that wasn't okay for a time, and then it was Baptist, and then it was this. But by the time I was 10, 11, had so many things crammed down your throat and forced upon you. And that whole religious experience is also part of the whole fraud. And I think one of the things that people get turned off with by this knowledge and going down this road is that it triggers these childhood experiences about the term religion and the term about the church and so forth. So as soon as they start hearing a quote of a scripture or the Bible or whatever, their mind automatically tells them, oh, well, you know what, the Bible's man-made anyway, or you get into the New Age religion, or you get into this and that, and you're socially engineered, no different than understanding what money is, person is, the public education system, and all the rest of it. The religious industry is nothing but a private corporation as well, and it's all bullshit. And it's
They use the Bible as bait.
Exactly, and it's as much of a fraud as everything else is they give you 3% truth, and the rest is the lure in order to get you into their system.
So,
and I think people have to overcome this a little bit and do their own reading and deal with their own little barriers there. This is not a matter of a Bible thumping, oh, come into religion and come into our religion thing. This is sharing truth and knowledge.
Yes.
And what you do with it is strictly up to you.
and Mark, I'm the same as you, Catholic, shoved down my throat, left a bad taste in my mouth, didn't want to have anything to do with church, Bible, all that stuff. Just like I said in February when I went into Robin's room, I basically ran out of that room because it was scriptures and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyways, it doesn't even matter who wrote the Bible. I don't care who wrote the Bible. The fact is, what dinged for me was when he said, the Queen has sworn on this Bible. Bottom line, don't add to it, don't take away from it. I don't care who wrote the Bible. The bottom line is the laws that we're supposed to follow is in that book. Period. Done. That's where I'm coming
The standard.
from. Exactly.
Love it, and I think that is one of the main bridges, and I keep on using this term bridges in the format of getting from where we are in this reality and in this space and time to where we want to go. Anything in between is the bridge. And I think that very simple fact is so well said, Carol, that we don't have to look at this King James as the religion. It's a book that they agreed to run the world on, and we're only holding them accountable to that.
I forget who said it, but Carol, I don't know what it was in the room, but they said even if it was just a cookbook that she swore on.
Yeah.
She swore to follow that cookbook, and you can't deviate, add to, or take away from it.
Exactly.
How to serve man.
Yeah.
So I think that's I
Eat it rare.
think those are kind of important points for people to understand as well.
Yeah.
So let's I think we've given people a lot of information to go at and to kind of do a little bit of due diligence themselves. We're going to do updates with this and follow along because there is a process that's going to keep on going here.
Yeah.
But I would also like to take a little bit of time tonight and let's flip the shoe on the other foot here and do some devil advocate. And I want to put out a couple of questions there that I know by people messaging me and so forth that I am getting. So I do want to pass a couple of those on.
Okay.
If that's okay with you guys.
Yep.
And again, this is also very much, and I want people to understand, this is in the spirit of trying to get everybody's input in there and in the spirit of discovery and transparency. It's not an attack on this process or anything else. I'm trying here to play the devil side of it and make the argument in order for people to understand that side as well. So I think my first avenue I would like to go to, and it's one thing I'm still trying to seek remedy myself on, is we're going through this mortgage process. We go through the private agreement process. We go through that whole end. The system's there. They're going down their path, they're slamming you. And we even do get that, at least the compliance of them leaving you alone. We do accomplish that. They'll never give you a remedy, they'll never let you win, but they'll leave you alone. So you get to sit in your house there, Carol. They all leave you alone, and everything's all well and good. And you basically have put the check mark of the win up on your side of the board.
Okay.
Now the next step is you turn around 10 years from now and you decide to sell your house. And you want to sell your house out on the market, just like we believe we do now. And you want to get your equity out of the house, so because you want to move across the country, you want to move to Florida and spend your things.
Okay.
But now you turn around and find out, as Robin touched base on there, we don't own anything. Everything is actually off, and your actual title is a joint tenant in common. We don't own our property. You're just a tenant.
Good point.
So
yeah, we already know that. Yep.
So now when you turn around to list your house and they pull up that title and deed, it belongs to the bank. Doesn't belong to you. You're not going to be able to close your property. You sure will not get any asset out of it. So
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Okay, so where am I missing anything here? Because people that have sought that other remedy and are being left alone through the mortgage fraud, they do turn around and go to move and sell their property and so forth, and find out, well, this false court has got the judgment on them, and they can't close their property.
Right, and that's pretty typical for everybody that I've ever heard of that tried to escape. Even, well, let's use Irene Gravenhorst. For one, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she was one lady in Vancouver who was extremely thorough with regards to keeping her home away from the banks and the RCMP and bailiffs, etc. And just like you said, when she finally did close the sale on her house, well, the bank come in and just cleaned out the account and took the money. And so obviously, like you've observed and hundreds of thousands of others have observed, when your house is registered on title with land registries and a sale takes place, the one with the caveat on the title, the first caveat gets paid. Now, what Christ said to do and why these are so powerful is once you enter into one agreement with somebody, then you can do what I like to call crossfire. Crossfire is where maybe you've got a dozen people already in your agreement relative to the bank, the court, the not prosecutor, but the lawyers, etc. But there are officers down at land titles. There are officers in the court registries. And what you can do now is you've already got them to agree that there's a fraud taking place here. You can't be compelled to participate in usury. There's a violation of 176, 180, and 423 of the Criminal Code, standing in the wings. And what you do is you go over and you get an agreement with the people at registries that any caveats that have been placed against the property have been done so in a civil action. And the civil action is in violation of the faith and beliefs of the church. Indeed, it's obstructing, it's a nuisance, and is seen and felt as quite intimidating to the church's ability to remain free of the effects of mammon and its godless rules and regulations. The church having full defense of the rules of God, whereas Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. In a Christian monarchy, swearing to uphold the laws of God, when the preamble to the Canadian Charter says it recognizes the supremacy of God, and it says, and the rule of law behind it, it isn't the rule of law coming out of a comic book. It's the law of God that the Queen swore to defend with all of her power. So they're kind of locked into that, but only if you put it in front of their face and serve it up to them as a meal regularly to let them know that you have faith, like for instance maybe a Sikh would, or a man that was from Islam would. These people culturally have been brought up since they were children, and exercising their faith is like taking a breath. They understand it so fully that it is abnormal for them not to practice their faith on a second-by-second basis. So for a Christian or a man or woman that believes in Christ to all of a sudden start acting more like a Sikh or an Islamic is quite a shock to the banker. And yet there's nothing he can say about it. He certainly can't say, well, you don't get to act like a Sikh or an Islamic. You don't get to take your faith seriously.
No, I mean, absolutely. And that's, so is that almost, that's almost like saying you're kind of moving on to going to an rodeal title or to a quiet title of the deed as well, isn't it?
Well, it's more like you're adopting steward. You're the steward. God owns all things. There is nothing on the planet that is owned by any man or woman or corporation. God owns all things. Even the Catholic Church makes its claim that they own everything. That's just some earthly organization, but we know that the Creator owns all things, so we can only be steward. And as it turns out, somebody who has stewardship over property that has properly been appointed has more authority over that property than if they owned it.
Yep. And one of the things I wanted to add on to here in my line of thinking, and you can by all means correct me, is this is also one problem that not only by seeking the remedy that you mentioned, but selling your property or doing things otherwise, if you've got 100,000 people or 1 million people in their property, and then you had your own listings between you in the first place, and you were simply transferring over by private agreement your properties, I mean, you're staying right out of the system on top of it anyway.
Yep. There's a fellow in Kamsack, Saskatchewan, and he purchased the old Elks Lodge in downtown Kamsack. He never registered it with land titles, and he never paid taxes for 5 years, based upon the fact that they had no authority to tax him because he was not in a contractual relationship with the registries. He never registered with them.
Yep.
He said, show me the law that forces me to.
Yep.
They didn't have one.
That's kind of a, again, it's when you get through this onion and you start peeling off these layers that they put in front of you to go under, it comes to being really basic and simple if you get rid of the fear and you just look at the core issues.
Yes. It is quite simple. The basic side of, you got a Bible, you got a queen sworn to defend it. You're not supposed to add to its rules or take away from it. There's the basics. And then all the complications of the codes, rules, and regulations in Parliament and legislature. That's all the fiction. That's all the clown show. That's your Carnalville.
The actors.
The actors, yeah. You don't have to participate in it unless you don't have any faith. If you don't have any faith, you've got no excuse, nothing to fall back on. You're hooped. 794 of their Canadian Criminal Code provides an interesting terminology which gives evidence as to what I'm saying. Is if there's anything that acts as a proviso, a qualification, an excuse, an exemption, or a reason whatsoever that their law, code, or regulation does not apply to you, and you do not bring it to the attention of the prosecutor before the case proceeds, then he proceeds under the assumption that all of his codes, rules, and regulations apply to you. So let's go back. He says that if you've got an exemption, an exception, a qualification, a proviso, or some reason why his law and his assumptions of law do not apply to you, all you got to do is put them down on a piece of paper and send it to him. And now by law, he's required to rebut what you said. You put down, Christ gave his blood for me, I'm redeemed from all sin. And you send it back to him. Well, how's he going to rebut that?
No kidding. Again, it's simple. When you were, you touched base on something before too, and it's I kind of want to cross-reference this a little bit to give a background of what I'm saying. Is the last couple of years along this rabbit hole, I've also gone down the rabbit hole of our original people. I don't like calling them Aboriginal or
No, they're originals.
all the rest of it. I've always used the term originals.
Yeah.
But this is exactly the same fraud they're going under, the same control and hierarchy within inside of their culture. And again, they have their great law that is almost lost because all of theirs was oral and they've so devastated the culture. So I find it very interesting that they so mirror each other that even within inside of the great law, nobody owned anything. Everything was a steward. Everything was for the betterment of all. And they are in the same condition, if not a lot worse than we are, that this is what we have to go back to is the absolute core of that. And within inside of this culture, part of my rabbit hole was the Sundance ceremony and within inside of learning more of that.
Right.
And it comes down to the same thing. One of my first teachings within inside of going down that path was this isn't something that you do one day and you spend your 10 days and the 4 days actually doing the ceremony fasting and the rest of it. This is a life. This is a part of your core that you live and breathe 365 days a year and is part of your being. This is not come do this, put it on the shelf, see you next year. And
Did you go meet Wolverine?
no, I haven't actually.
The Gustafson Lake standoff?
No, I haven't met him.
Well, because we were talking about the round dance and the Sundance, and that was 1996 in BC, where they fired 250,000 rounds at the originals there because they were having a Sundance.
Oh my gosh.
There's a huge history through that. I was fortunate enough to deal with a Sundance in Michigan where they're actually trying to do it underneath the principles of all equal to all races, to all beings, to men and women. And it more resonated with me that this ceremony was not hijacked by the culture like it seems to have been. And I don't want to kind of get into a political spectrum in that and step on toes where people aren't here to speak for themselves. But my opinion is no different than the King James is. And I'm only speaking from my personal side, both what I believe as far as the white man's religion or the original people's culture. My relationship is between me and the Creator, the Great Spirit, God, and all of you have nothing to say about it.
Yep.
There's nobody between me and him or her or whatever else terms you want to use.
Yeah.
My core is there's nobody between us. And if anybody's trying to interfere with that and believe they have a right to interfere with that, they're mistaken.
Show me the letter either from me or my maker saying you can come between us.
Yep. So, hey, I want to, just because it made me think of something again, that was like a really cool thing that Robin set off a bunch of light bulbs for me when he arrived here. But one of the things he was saying, because he's sitting there and we're not even getting into a conversation yet about stuff, we're just getting to know each other, and I bring out this like Walmart bag of paper, of stacks of paper and all this stuff that I've been doing, right? And I put it down on the ground and he's looking at it, and I'm talking to him about what the things that I had done, and he says, that ain't gonna help you. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, like my heart sunk, and I'm like, what do you mean it didn't help me? Anyways, then he does this, I guess you call it an analogy, and he said something like, he goes, okay, he says, these people are blood-sucking vampires, and he says, what are a couple of things that you can like use to stop a vampire. And I said, stake in the heart. And he said, well, that's wood. And see all that paper? There's the wood. That's the stake right there. And he says, but you know what else you use? And he held up his hands and he made the sign of a cross. And he goes, that's what you need. And it was like, look, the hairs are standing up on my arm when I say that, because that was another like ding moment for me. Anyways, I had to share that.
No, absolutely. And and these are the simple analogies I think we got to also use. I mean, we've been so dumbed down, so controlled, so socially engineered, on a multitude of levels. And I mean, I think Robin touched on a really good base again, was, you start understanding some of this, and there's a real little internal button that goes of embarrassment and almost self-loathing, that you were almost so stupid that you've done this. And I think people also need to be kind to themselves. Forgiveness here has to begin with yourself. Your whole being has to come back to being a better person, being a better knowledgeable entity from day to day. Give yourself a break. Be kind to yourself. Love yourself. You'll be able to then share that light out. And I think we need to support and encourage that in people, and start actually living under forgiveness than this other means.
And like the book says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah. And if anybody, like the people that are listening now too, if you live in the area that I live, which is in Victoria, BC, and any of this resonates with you, or if you want to talk to me, like, I am totally open and ready to help other people. I may be a newborn, but I kind of get it. I get the fraud. I get all the stuff, and I mean, I have so many people around me that can support me. And if I don't have an answer, I can always ask questions, and that's one of the greatest things about this whole experience. Was Arthur had said to me one time, asking questions keeps you in honor. And it's like, that's what I've done the whole way through, is just ask questions. Why? What about this? What about that? And I was always asking questions of the bank, the lawyers, never getting any response. So anyways, if anybody needs some help, or they want to come and join me at my sanctuary, I'm here.
And just in kind of wrapping it up here a little bit, I'll add on to that of course, Canada Nation Facebook group, Canada Nation page, please pass that on. You'll find Carol and Sheila and myself and Robin linked up. People are coming together. They do have information to share, and at the very least, an ear to listen to, and some unity. We have to start reaching out and asking for help, just as well as supporting each other and doing what you can for your brother. This society of just what can I get out of this and everything else and not offering back doesn't work either. So I encourage people that are involved in this rabbit hole. It's just as healing to give, if not more so, than to receive. So please start supporting each other. Hook up on the groups and so forth. We're all networking through them. Of course, the Media Center, Chance George, the producer, or myself, emails, websites are there. We book your show. Start using our platform. Reach out to us. You want a platform to go on. We're not asking for anything, but anything that you can do to help us support the network. We need to start getting some resources in and so forth, because we're getting tapped. So this is, I'm trying to encourage and reach out to people, instead of going to Blog Talk Radio or these other ones coming out of the States now and all the rest of it that are just corporations and are making huge profits. How about start supporting and doing your show with us? And you know what, $100 a month or $50 a month goes to paying our internet and programming and so forth. So you're paying that in other places, and all you're doing is lying some bankers' pocket.
Yeah.
So I would encourage that to kind of get that word out a little bit. So just in closing, I'll give the floor to you guys with any kind of closing comments or links or information you'd like to share, and then say good night. And once I say the final good night, then Chance will just come on and do our closing.
I'd like to interject too is that anybody in Ontario that wishes to contact me, please do so. We have successfully defended our house through a foreclosure process in March. Sheriff, bailiff, etc., appearing and having to go away. They've gone through another court procedure behind our back, held a hearing June 5th apparently in Walkerton Courthouse without informing us, and are proceeding to try to come back again on Thursday of this week. Again, they are looking for the paperwork for the deed of the property. They are not looking for you to vacate the home, and trying to understand that the legal work is just the two-dimensional paperwork that they're trying to close on, not actually on the home itself. So if anybody's needing some help, please contact me as well. So
I'd just like to say that a lot of people along this process do eventually end up in court over one thing or another, whether it be their house or a speeding ticket or something. And a lot of times when you're in those procedures and you don't really understand what's going on, you want to ask questions, and some of those sneery judges are real nasty, and they'll say stuff, if you ask one more question, I'm going to find you in contempt. So just as a little tip to all the listeners out there that feel they're compelled and intimidated into showing up in any of those fraudulent proceedings, make sure one of the first things that comes out of your mouth is, can I be held in contempt for asking questions in order to determine the nature and proceedings of this court? So you're asking them if you can be held in contempt for asking questions in order to understand what's going on.
perfect.
Once they say no, you can ask anything you want.
Nice.
Very good.
Well, I guess for my closing, I just want to thank you, Mark, for inviting me to come on your show. Thank you to Sheila. I love you, man, and I miss you, and I can't wait for you to move out here. And thanks to Robin, and just, when my husband and I were going through all of this, the day before Robin showed up on my doorstep, Rod and I compared stories, and we were both laying in bed praying, and I don't even know if I was praying to God, but we were both praying, we need some help. We need someone to help us. And then Robin appeared. And I mean, I don't want to swear, but you can't make that shit up. Like, it's just like, you can't make it up. People appear when you ask for help. Bottom line. I don't know. And I just love all you guys. I love everybody. And I just want people to get this and not think that I'm a nut job. There's so many people that think I'm crazy, but I'm not. This is all true.
I'm here to bear evidence of the fact that neither
And
Rod nor
I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
And it is that we are so unconnected, and yet there is literally hundreds and thousands of us in one avenue, on one path, all heading towards this remedy that we're all seeking. There is hundreds of thousands of us, not tens of thousands, and there is millions of us around the whole world. So the last thing you ever have to think of anymore is that anything that's said, you look like you're crazy, because you don't. And all it is that we yet are still socially conditioned not to speak out, and to hide away in our homes and so forth. We have to start reaching out to our neighbors and across the street. It's amazing how many people you meet on a day-to-day basis. When you start to say something, they go, "Oh, I know this," and "Oh, geez, you know this," and away you go. And
Like
because everybody's hiding around in this little closet. Start speaking out, and you'll find out that you ain't alone.
They're embarrassed that they're not able to make their bill payments, but it has nothing to do with them. Everybody is going through it. There's a usurpation of our value, and we've got to pull together and deal with this and fix it.
I remember when I knew every single person on my street and their dog. I was growing up.
Yeah.
Yep,
You
and
know,
it-
not
and-
just my street, the blocks, the whole town. I knew everybody.
Yeah.
People don't do that anymore. They're sitting inside their house and it's just, yeah, you're right. We got to reach out.
Yeah, there's a lot of social discussions we could have and so forth, but we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Once again,
Sorry, Mark.
I thank you very much for the time and the effort you're all doing and the sharing. We definitely do want to do a follow-up show. We are in contact all the way through. That will never end. And I look forward to speaking to you on a regular basis and do a follow-up show.
Okay.
So,
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you having us on.
Yep. Thank you. Love ya.
again, love and blessings out to both of you. Blessings to the audience. Thank you for joining us. Please share this show around. Get this information out and review it. Everything is there. And if you have questions, reach out. We're here to help. So I'll just leave my normal little closing. I hope you all can be a little bit better tomorrow than you were today. That's all we can really truly ask for. Take care of each other and take care of yourself. And
Thank you.
we'll let Chance wrap it up. Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, all. Good night, Sheila.
Good
night,
night.
Sheila.
Thanks, guys. Love ya.
Love you too.
Blessings.
Rod says bye.
You're watching Network Radio. Live from the Media Broadcasting Center.